Hello everybody, welcome to What About the Game. Today I'm going to be talking about FreezeME on the Wii U eShop. So FreezeME is a love letter to 3D platformers of old. Even if you didn't know anything about the game beforehand, the second you drop into the very first level, a wave of Super Mario 64 nostalgia will hit you in a very soft spot. Trying to live up to the titan of the Nintendo 64 classic and others of that era is a task not to be taken lightly. So does it live up to the classics? Well, not quite. The story is very simplistic, which is fine. A game of this type doesn't require anything deep. You are a young girl called R, whose dog has been kidnapped by the fat cat who wants to rid the world of dogs. Chasing after your dog, R is transported to one of the game's 4 worlds. There's not much of an introduction aside from being told to check the control schemes in the menus. After that, you're free to do as you please in the first world. The main goal is to collect golden cubes that are scattered around the levels. It can be a little overwhelming as to where to go next. Sure, the game shows you where the first cube outside the tutorial is, but it gives you nothing about how to reach that floating platform in the sky. Well, after exploring a little here and there, you'll eventually find your way. You can't help but feel a lack of direction throughout the whole game. I personally found it more useful to just wander around and stumble across them rather than seeking out the ones that you targeted before entering the level. Like I said, there are 4 worlds in FreezeME that gradually unlock as you collect more and more golden cubes. The levels are absolutely huge, often overwhelmingly so. The first level will give you a "so, where do I go now?" kind of feel. They have lots of little things packed into them, small challenges, tasks and secrets. It seems like every part of the map has some purpose, no matter how small, which is rather commendable. The level designs themselves are generally hit and miss, especially the platforming sections. While many of them can be fun, many of them are just like weirdly placed, like odd positioning. As hinted towards in the name of the game, R has a special camera that can freeze enemies in their tracks. You can use the control sticks to aim at what you want to freeze, but to be honest, it's so difficult to aim properly with it. You can just use the gamepad touchscreen instead, which works much better, and this can be used to your advantage in a variety of puzzles, and as long as that you remember it's there, it is really rather useful. One of my main gripes with FreezeME is in its controls. Jumping feels awkward. You can do a double jump, a wall jump, and even do a leaping backflip. It's really twitchy, and I often found myself doing actions that I didn't intend to do. If you combine this with the odd platforming challenges and a rather stubborn camera, it often led to frustration, even very early on in the game. For me, a 3D platformer lives and dies on 3 things: its controls, its camera, and its level design. Unfortunately, FreezeME just doesn't succeed in any of these requirements. Although I've criticized this game rather heavily up to this point, I do have a confession to make. The more I played FreezeME, the more I began to enjoy it. After playing it for around half an hour for the quick look video on the YouTube channel, I'd already judged the game to be surprisingly terrible. I didn't like it at all. All the complaints previously mentioned were just too strong for me not to. But as I forced my way through the first handful of cubes, on the first level, I was introduced to the second and third levels in quick succession, and I began to rather enjoy my time playing it. I didn't think it was great, and maybe not even good, but at least decent. And thinking about it now, I think it's a combination of 2 reasons as to why I changed my mind, at least a little. The first is that I became used to the controls and the camera. I began to learn its flaws, quirks, and limitations enough to get by with as little frustration as possible. The second is that the first level is probably terrible. I say that with uncertainty as I can't quite put my finger on what makes it so unappealing, and while I'm not saying the later stages are classics by any means, they are much better than the first one. They're visually more appealing, have a better direction and more thought out designs, just completely more enjoyable and interesting to play. FreezeME has a heart of a good game in there. It just needs a little more polish and focused direction to bring it together. Sadly, as it stands, the trifecta of controls, camera, and level design still come across a little amateurish, which may sound harsh, but that's the truth, to be honest. But once you get past the first level and adjust to the ropey controls, I think you'll grow to appreciate FreezeME a little more than your initial impressions. It's at this point it transforms from a disappointing game into a decent one. It could still do with a little more polish though. Okay guys, if you've enjoyed this video then be sure to like and subscribe. You can read the full review of FreezeME at whataboutthegame.com. That will really help me out a lot. And you can also follow me on Facebook and Twitter if you want to. All the links are below. Thanks guys, bye bye.